Welcome back to the Lanterne Rouge Cycling Podcast. Here with Benji for stage 2 of the Giro d'Italia from Teramo to San Salvo. We'll also have a Vuelta Femenina wrap-up. We had a cracking stage, one of the best last 2 races this weekend of the season so far in La Vuelta, with Vollering and Van Vleuten going head-to-head. But first, we'll do the Giro, the first sprint stage. And again, like, you can look at this parkour and say, oh, isn't there a little bit for the pure, the punchy guys like Cort, or couldn't they get in the breakaway? Maybe in week 3, but first stage like this, no. Even though there's rolling medium mountains, it was pretty easily controlled by Trek Segafredo because it's 202 Ks with 50 Ks of flat, Benji. And the main thing I was curious about was how much stress there would be in the finish. But who do we have in the breakaway? Please tell me there was a bias in there. I don't know which one though.
Mattia Baez was in the breakaway. Every single time in these Giro breakaways, we've either got the 2 Baez brothers, one of the Baez brothers, or we have Mirko Maestri, which is that Bardiani guy that always goes in the breakaway in Milano Sanremo. Those are the ones that go in there. But it wasn't just Italians. It was Baez, Thomas Champion also in there, Paul Lapere, and another Italian called Stefano Gonde, which actually haven't heard of before. So welcome Gonde in our... He sounds French.
And is Ver Italian or French? I know he's on Arkea.
He's Italian, correct.
He's Italian. Okay, well, fair enough. So yeah, it was a decent-sized break, but Trek had it under control. They were pacing, from what I could see, with Gebregs, Gabir, Tesfacion, and Vergara. Earlier, my big question mark for Trek Segafredo was and remains, do they have the firepower for the actual sprint? Mm-hmm. And I think we actually have a bit of an answer in this stage, which is no. But at the intermediate sprint, we see who's, I guess, thinks they're going for the points jersey, and that was the break had been caught at that point, and they went for 4 points. This is something new as well. Before the intermediate sprint, wouldn't you back in the day have seen this break get a much bigger leash, like 3 minutes max, just about, and then they reel it in really tight, and for like the last 50 Ks, just about. There's no breakaway. We see it in UAE Tour sometimes. Is that just born out of we don't want to make it hard for us in the end game and we want to be set up for the finish? I don't know. Like, why is that happening?
Ooh, that's a good question. Now, when it comes to the intermediate sprint, just want to say the break was still up there, but there's so many points to be given.
True.
That the not the GC group, the group of the peloton can also take other points. So there's still 4, 3, 2, 1 points available for the peloton itself, and we see a bunch of riders move up. Why is it that the break doesn't get a leash? Because they were caught not that far after. I think it's because teams are trying to get in position, nervousness in the early week probably, to try and get to the front as much as possible, and that might be the reason. But for a second here, this intermediate sprint, break takes the fast forward positions, but Gaviria actually wins ahead of Matthews, and when I was watching, I thought it was Matthews that was winning ahead of Gaviria, which was kind of surprising because the lead out was weird. As in, they had the trains of Movistar, you had the train of Jayco as well, and Pedersen was kind of the lone ranger who was in like 7th, 6th position to completely at the back. So I was kind of surprised to see him that badly positioned.
Because he doesn't have a lead out man.
Well, he has Kirsch, but
I'm a Kirsch booster. I love Alex Kirsch. I think he's a really fantastic rider, but he's not a pure last man. There's no Edward Turns here, Danny Van Poppel, Christophe Laporte, even Edo Affini we saw in Paris-Nice is a good last man. That sort of level. Kirsch is much more sort of he can do a longer pull and more versatile than those guys. They didn't bring turns. So I mentioned that it could be a problem. I think it was, I don't know, like, they also got a bit unlucky today, Trek, which we'll get to in the final as well. Maybe it would have been a bit different had things, a bit of bad luck. But if you want to watch every stage of this Giro d'Italia, and tomorrow, listen, with the nervousness we saw today, I wouldn't be surprised if we saw guys already attacking tomorrow on what's a medium mountain sort of no risk, no glory stage. If you want to watch every K of the Giro d'Italia live and on demand, maybe you want to watch along to this podcast, which I would recommend, particularly for the sprint stages. Click the last 5Ks on. GCN Plus is the best place to do so, and in selected territories, LRCP listeners, you can get 15% off an annual pass. And if you compare that pricing, don't just take my word for it, compare that pricing to baseball, football, you'll have to help me out on Benji or Luke, I don't know the cost of football subscriptions or other sports streaming. The cost of GCN Plus for the sport we have and the coverage they have is unbelievably good value, and even better so, that 15% off. So thanks to GCN for supporting the show, and go and check that out through the link down below. But this was a Giro sprint stage. Nothing too much happened. At 20Ks to go, it went from Trek was controlling with Gebregs, Gabius, Tesfation. Everyone seemed happy for them to do so. We didn't really see Quickstep. We didn't really see any of Jumbo-Visma or Ineos. And then I swear, all the DSs on their Velo Viewer notifications at 20K to go, it was like, tell everyone to get to the front and start doing the lead outs. Because every team to GC team then just moves up and the pace goes from like pretty chill, I didn't see too much stress, to like full stress, almost Tour de France level stress.
Would you say the reason that this happens is also because we're at the start of a Grand Tour? We don't necessarily know which rider is going to be the team, which team is going to be the team that will take up the final straight in these sprints, which teams are going to be the strongest ones when it comes to the final lead-outs and so forth, and therefore every team is trying to set up their own sprinter and not necessarily basing their strategy on opposing teams. So, for example, like Cavendish was there for a second with the Astana train at the front. It's the only time I've seen the Astana train in the final, but he was present there quite a bit, and the other teams were moving past. Like you say, every DS was probably shouting in the ears, get to the damn front, get to the damn front.
And on to your point, I reckon there are some teams and some guys who think, oh, well, Remco's moved to the front, Roglic has moved to the front, I better get to the front. Because there's some teams like AG Tuara moving to the front. Pinot just has a guy do a full lead out to get him to the front. And listen, that might have actually saved him in this final, that lead out, because I don't know, there needs to be, someone is going to have to do like thousands of hours of study, which I'm probably not the person to do it unless I get really bored in the off season, where you go and somehow calculate the extra energy you spend or the increased crash risk. Like Roglic, for example, in that Tour de France stage 2021, if Roglic doesn't try and move up, does he crash with Colbrelli? Probably not there. But then is he caught behind the Hague crash? Probably. And you have to look at all that. Is it worth it stressing so much? If you have the team to do it, to keep you in front position, it's better to be in front position. But then you see guys like Gloag and Kuss who aren't going for GC. They just sit at the back, not caring. EF, different. Iran and Carthy are freewheeling, was like wheels off, but that might have cost them time today. So on balance, if you are serious about GC and winning this race, yeah, it is better to be at the front. And the stress increases. We see Ineos, Benji. I want to focus on them a little bit in this run-in. They have Ganna, they have Swift, they have Puccio, and De Plus is here as a domestique. And frankly, Arensman should be here as a domestique. At this, like, he's a domestique here. And Swift at one point sprints up with Gegenhardt in front of the Trek train. They go to the right to the gutter, and then they slide back, and there's no other Ineos guys there. And then Ganna does the same thing, but doesn't go the whole way. And then they kind of sit mid-pack at the back right. And then they do a really hard lead out late through these, where there's some narrowings. And with Puccio, really hard. They blew Quickstep and Jumbo's doors off after Dennis had set it up. And then it was just Affini Hessman and it was Catania Ballerini for Remco and Pink. And then there was no one after. No De Plus, no Arensman, no Ganna. Like, surely, why wouldn't you use Ganna to keep the guys safe today, assuming he could? He's too far away from GC to get it on the sprint or anything like that.
I agree, and it's not the only thing when it comes to Ganna where I'm like, there's something wrong in this stage in terms of what he should be doing versus what he's doing. But at that point, I agree with that being the thing that he should be doing. He should be keeping Ineos to the front, making sure that they stay at the front, not in the same way that Puccio did, which was a bit of a rush to the front. And Puccio can't sustain that, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
Ganna is the guy that can sustain that and can keep the team at the front in that way. But it's also the thing where, because Ganna's not doing it, it's a bit of a process of waves that are happening with the front of the peloton. So you've got Ineos moving on the right side of the road. They move up, like you said, with Puccio. But since Puccio can't hold it, another team takes over. And I'm pretty sure that was Remco with Quickstep on the left side with Cataneo moving past as well. This was indeed just before a very weird narrow section. I was like, it's a wonder nobody crashed in this damn road. But they get through there, and then it's just chaos for a bit. I couldn't tell which teams was just taking over, because one team took over, then another, then Cataneo was gone, then Cataneo came back.
It was weird, like, I would say ultimately the teams that were good at keeping position were Quickstep and Jumbo-Visma. Quickstep probably able to stay in the front wheels with Ballerini or lead the peloton, and it was Affini and Hessman sort of in a pocket behind them, not able to pull, but keeping Roglic in good position. And we didn't really see Trek were deeper. We didn't see Alpecin were there with Naesen or another rider. They were at the front too on the left-hand side. And this is why it's important when I said Puccio pulled, he did that pull maybe 6.5 Ks to go. And their goal, right, is to get to the 3 kilometer mark. So they got 3.5 Ks to make up. And I would say, do you know anybody that can pull on the flat for 3.5 kilometers pretty well? I'd say Pippo Ganna is probably the man I would try and get to go to the front to do that role. And they didn't. And so they wash back. Bahrain have their GC guys, hey, kind of fighting for himself.
Yeah.
Arashiro had set it up, but Milan was on with Pasquale on, being piloted, sort of going for the sprint, which is smart. Like, they're not the favorite to win this race, probably even to podium. So Milan has to have a rider and be able to go for his own chances. And then everyone gets through those narrow sections unscathed, and then 3.7 Ks to go. It's still maybe Alpecin and just the GC teams. There's just a crash out of nowhere, and I still haven't seen the heli shot. Maybe I've only seen it once and I couldn't narrow it down and zoom in, but there's Alpecin on the front left, then Quickstep. I first see Remco shout. You can see him shouting at somebody, and then the Quickstep riders look behind themselves, and then Remco freewheels and or brakes. He lets a decent gap go, but I don't know what's caused that to his front left, or what's happened to his front left that he didn't like, because the Quickstep guys wave across, Affini waves across, and then when there's the wave, this is the way you're on at the front. When you're at the front and there's this reaction, okay, you make it, everyone reacts. The domino effect behind is someone in the back right pocket is going to crash, and there's a hard crash that goes down. I've been manically refreshing the time splits, but from what I could tell, it was a serious crash at high speed where I would say 2/3 of the peloton were caught behind it, and this is a narrow road, and everyone's on the line, and I was like, there is going to be time gaps with this crash.
There should be time gaps with this crash, I would say. I agree that the initial cause of the crash is not 100% visible yet. Maybe with analyzing it a few more times, we can see what caused those Quickstep riders to move to the other side of the road and so forth. But we were talking just 5 minutes before that crash about Roglic's position, that he was just kind of in the middle of the pack, and we said if he stays in that position, then he's going to be in trouble if a crash happens in front of him. Now, that crash happens 5 kilometers later, and he seems to be just ahead of it, right? So he seems to have moved up by that point, or the team seems to have moved up him by that point, which truly saved his potential a few seconds there, or maybe more, because he could have crashed out at that point. But there was a team that was hindered, multiple teams. Trek was on the right side. I feel like Trek was this entire run-in kind of in a position where they were like DSM back in the day, with a train of KS Ball, with an entire train on the right side of the road and not necessarily moving up big time and just staying there on the right. And this was the worst position for that crash, and Pedersen was nowhere because of that crash. I don't know if he actually crashed, maybe his teammates crashed, but he was hindered. But also Ineos, right?
Ineos, Thomas, I'm pretty sure Thomas made it to the front group. Gegenhardt, because he was given the KOM jersey after they realised there was a timing issue for McNulty's time segments yesterday on the TT, which fills you with a lot of confidence that all the timing is 100% okay. But Gegenhardt was, helpfully for identification, he was in that blue jersey, and I couldn't see him in the front group. And yet Ganna's in the front group and not dropping back to pull for Gegenhardt. And like, Ganna's not winning the sprint. He's not able to, say, get the Maglia Rosa for any reason. I see no reason why he shouldn't, unless he's piloting Thomas, which he wasn't in the last 2Ks, why he wouldn't go back to pull for Gegenhardt. Now, I know it's really hectic and the DSs might not have even seen or whatever, but yeah, if Gegenhardt, I presume he would have got on the radio, said, I'm behind, guys, because he didn't crash so badly that he's not finished the race. So that was curious to me that they didn't use Ganna as well to drop back for Gegenhardt. How much time he's lost, I'm not sure. Whether it's... Anyway, big crash. I think that's evidence number 1 out of 1 data point that you want to be at the front. And then who have we got here? We have basically Alpecin leading out the sprint for Caden Groves. They have their train. They were the best lead out, as we thought that they have the best lead out here with Sinkeldam. Riesebeek set it up before, but Sinkeldam, I think, was the last man for Alpecin. We've got Milan is piloted onto Groves' wheel by Pascalon. Pascalon, I think, unreal signing for them. Like, okay, he's not going to win the biggest races. He's not going to, I think he did okay in the classics, but to pilot Milan onto the wheel you want to be on, like that, and put him there without spending too much energy. Really impressive. Deeper's Gaviria on Milan's wheel, and then it's Arna Marit found to Marche. Dainese was leading out Meyerhofer after, which is curious because Dainese won a sprint last year in the Giro d'Italia.
Yeah, but Dainese and DSM,
and
they're dividing up at the end of the year. I've heard some rumors.
They sent him to Tour of the Alps to come last every stage, right? Yeah.
He's not their friend anymore, I'm afraid. Their friendship on Facebook is over. But Meyerhofer, we saw him in
Cadel
Evans Great Ocean Road Race.
Disrespect our Australian one-day race.
I'm sorry for forgetting that one race in Australia that everybody forgets after 2 days. But Meyerhofer, you're right. He was strong there. But I feel like he's kind of that sprinter where I thought he was going to be that sprinter that is more on the versatile end due to Cadel Evans Great Ocean Road Race. So I wasn't necessarily seeing him compete against the Caden Groves of the world and so forth. Ackerman was there, like you mentioned. Gaviria was there. And also those riders where you don't necessarily think they can compete for the victory, but they're there to sprint, which means that they might hinder other riders that are also trying to sprint, which is a Jake Stewart, for example. I didn't necessarily see him sprint against the best here, but I don't know. I wasn't actually sure who was going to win from this because Ackerman hasn't looked that amazing this year.
No.
David Dekker, we've not seen him sprint really. Jonathan Milan was strong in that one flat sprint against Groenewegen in Saudi Tour. Yeah. And then Meyerhofer, when it comes to his flat sprint, I wasn't sure. Arne Marit, I wasn't sure either. Gaviria looked good, but I'm not as sold on Gaviria as you are, maybe.
Well, the problem is there's no corner for him to jump to here. It's pretty much a straight line finish.
It's a corner.
And it's kept at high speed. So if you jump early and he's on Milan's wheel, you're going to have to just eat wind from high speed for 20 seconds. And you're going to lose most of the time against World Tour sprinters.
But what happened with Gaviria's acceleration? Because now he seems to be that sprinter that needs to go early and hold off, while in the past he had such an acceleration. That Giro where he won 4 stages, there were brutal accelerations in that sprint where he passed 20 riders or so in the last 500 meters and won the bloody stage in the purple Ciclamino jersey. That stage was amazing.
Quick step effect, I guess. I mean, everyone gets worse when they leave quick step when they're a sprinter. But anyway, Alpecin lead it out. Drop off Caden Groves, maybe a little bit early, but still he's not had to spend as much energy as anybody else. Milan, he's got them big elbows, gets them out, fights off Arne Marit for Groves' wheel. But Gaviria jumps early, like we expected. He jumps early off Milan's wheel, and Groves is led out by Sinkeldam on the barriers. Milan follows him up the barriers, so he's getting draft once because Milan likes to jump early. And Gaviria then, he's side by side with Groves. Gaviria splits off to the left. And that opens the door in the middle of Groves and Gaviria for Jonathan Milan to kick. And when he kicks, he's just, his peak power is bigger than these guys now. Bahrain flick him a lot. Like they made him lead out Rajovic in Saudi Stage 1. Yeah. Like this kid is incredibly talented. He's super young. He's got like big peak whilst when you look at his sprinting position, it's like a big sail. How quick's their skin suit? How quick's their bike for sprinting? I don't know, but he just absolutely torches everybody in this sprint. Now, he did get, for once, a really nice suction up off Groves' wheel, and then he's able to carry that speed and sprint for 10 seconds or so in the wind or less, just a perfect amount of time. But he beats everyone by, a decent bike length, and this was why I didn't pick Groves for a lot of sprints, because he won those Catalunya stages, but his top end... Like, it's not a Groenewegen, it's not a Jonathan Milan, it's not a even Pedersen, I don't think. I think his top end is not quite there compared to those guys over 12, 15 seconds. I could be wrong, and maybe he just hit a headwind really early today. But yeah, Milan wins. Dekker Benji, second as well, then Groves.
Let's start about Milan for a second.
Okay, Milan, yeah.
I feel like he's a bit of a raw gem in the sense that when he first showed up on the scene, he reminded me of an absolute tank of a man like Marcel Kittel and so forth. But then he was very versatile to be a Marcel Kittel. I was kind of surprised of his versatility considering his brutal size when it comes to the way he's on a bike and so forth, the way he rides around, the non-arrowness of Jonathan Milan despite him being a solid track rider for certain. Well, he's he might be a Trek rider next
Oh,
year as
yeah.
well, because there's rumors that he signed for Trek for 1 million or something. First of all, the 2 sprints that he won on the flat this year were sprints where he did it from a reduced group. Do you think that increases his ability to win those sprints? Do you think he will be able to do the same thing in a larger sprint, a full-on bunch sprint?
Yeah, I'm really high on Milan. Like, I think he's really, really good. I think if he goes to a team now, if I'm not saying Trek's the right team for that, but yeah, like he is aggressive. And listen, we call out aggression, but at the end of the day, if it breaks rules, but at the end of the day, if you want to sign a young sprinter, do you want him to aggressively fight for wheels or just let them go? Like, you have to, you want the guy to aggressively fight for wheels, claim wheels, hold position, and then sprint. Now, I agree I think his 5-minute power is really, really high. So can he get over punchy climbs?
Can he be able to come?
I do. He came top 15 in Kerner, I think, or 12th in Kerner, but his positioning and sometimes, I don't know, as you said, he's not the finished product by any means. So Trek have, if they have signed him for that amount, that is, well, he just won a Giro stage, so, you'd be pretty happy if you did. But for the classics, he's by no means a finished product.
When it comes to the classics, though, they have Pedersen. When I think of that, the idea of Milan going to Gent-Wevelgem as well and Kuurne as well, and we take a look at combining that with Pedersen, that might turn into it. But we're diving too deep into the potential Trek Segafredo preview for next year. You're right, David Dekker looked really strong, but he did sprint in the draft.
Yeah.
He did sprint in the draft, like you mentioned, so that has an effect. That gives him a bit of an advantage over riders that went early, like a Gaviria, for example, like a Gross, for example. They went early and they basically gave a lead out to Milan and Ackermann, who then came out. Ackermann came out of the lead out and waved back directly.
When Ackermann hits the wind, it's done. Like he just doesn't seem to have that top end. But yeah, the top 10 Milan wins ahead of Dekker, Groves, Anna Marit. That's a nice result for him.
Yeah.
In 4th, Meyerhofer 5th, Ackermann 6th, Gaviria, Bonifacio, Stewart, Matthews, Jayco. They don't have a last man. There's no Luca Mezgets here. I think Scotson had a mechanical with 7Ks to go, 10Ks to go. He's part of the lead-out train for Matthews. But Matthews is a pure bunch sprinter. He's not just like Court. He's not that guy. Like he's not. He's very, very fit. He's fitter than all these guys and can climb better than all these guys, except maybe Groves. So anyway, very odd top 10. I will note, if you're on PCS or First Cycling, have a look at these UCI points. Arne Marit, 80 UCI points for 4th. Meyerhofer, 60 UCI points for 4th. Last year, let me just check, do some quick maths. I'm pretty sure in a sprint stage, let's go to the one Cavendish one. 5th got 4 UCI points. 4th got 12 UCI points.
Mate.
This year, it's what? 80 and 60, and Lotto turned down their invite. And
before the rules changed.
Yeah, like they got screwed. But also, why don't DSM have Welsford here, man?
Firmly agree with that. Welsford would have cleaned up sprints here. He would have cleaned up sprints here. Bonifacio also 8 for Intermarché, so I don't know if they're
double stacking.
Maybe they're actually double stacking these sprints to make sure they have points, or
I think he did the lead out.
He did the lead out, but still being 8th means he continued sprinting a bit, I would expect, because Matthews probably was going for himself. And just finishing behind Gaviria, I think he still sprinted after the lead out and so forth. Yeah. But he's allowed to do so because it gained them more points, and I think they're going to be happy with that stuff. Now, if I look at this top 10, I'm like, okay, we know about the sprinters, but it's annoying that we don't know if Hart lost time or not, because I'm like...
I've been refreshing. I've been checking Twitter. I've been, looking to see what's happened. Now, I was looking really closely behind to see. So what happened is, so people also, so the riders know, and this is also a word to Primoz, who was still fighting really aggressively for position in the first third of the peloton with like a K and a half to go. On the sprint stages, which is, if you look in the regulations, stages expected to finish in a bunch sprint. To be put on a gap, there needs to be, Luke will look at me and shake his head if I'm wrong, there needs to be 3 seconds elapsed from the back wheel of the last rider in the group to the first rider in the next group. 3 seconds at 65 kilometers an hour. Someone will put in the comments the quick maths. That is a huge gap. If you look at 1, 2, 3. Yeah, I just counted 3 seconds. At 65 kph, you can be 25 meters off the wheel and you still won't be put on a gap.
Yeah.
And so that's why Remco was doing the right thing, just like dangling at the back of the group, not really getting in amongst the sprint after the 3K rule. Anyway.
About that.
Well, yeah.
You can continue.
Well, the reason I brought up the rule is because then when this group finished, there was a second group dangling. And so there was this group dangling between G1 and let's call it the Gegenhardt, J-Vine, or other GC group that were caught behind the crash. And I really want to know, and that's why I keep refreshing. I reckon they don't know. And honestly, 99% chance there's a controversy cooking up that we're going to have to refer to tomorrow based on the timing yesterday. But whether that group in the middle dangling reset, because if it's 2 seconds to them and then 2 seconds to them, then the group 3 gets put on the same time. But they're probably doing that calculation now. And if they weren't, then they get, I don't know, put on whatever time. So I don't think Gegenhardt's group or Almeida or whoever will have lost more than 20 seconds. It's not going to be like a minute, 2 minutes that they've lost, but I don't know, 20 seconds is annoying. And it's going to increase the stress for the more sprint stages, right?
Yeah, it should definitely increase the stress. And riders like Gegenhardt and so forth, on paper, they would need as much time as necessary for the time trials if they do want to compete for the podium. But then again, Roglic disappointed in the first time trial. So the podium for Gegenhardt seems seemingly possible at the moment. I would also say you spoke about those gaps and so forth, but I want to bring it back to the one detail that you mentioned, which was Remco dangling at the back and Roglic fighting with everybody during the last 2 kilometers to stay at the front in that sprint. Very surprised to see that because I was like, I feel like Remco's in a safer place at that moment, dangling at the back.
In the last 2.5 Ks, just sit at the back freewheel. Like, you're not going to get put on time. The most you get put on is a second. Or
he was fighting Bahrain riders.
Yeah. Oh, maybe that was Hessman. I don't know. First Cycling finally has the time gaps. It was as we expected. So Vlasov made it into the front group with Thomas, Evenepoel, Kemna, Caruso, Ganna there, curiously, Roglic, Cepeda, Alexander Cepeda, Alexander Cepeda made the front group. McNulty, I think, dropped back because he was doing a lead out for somebody else. I'm looking for where Almeida is. See, Almeida made the front group. Whether that was because of McNulty pulling, I'm not sure. Now, the people that lost time, Haig, Vine, Uran, Pino, Carthy, Gegenhardt, Rubio, and that's all the GC guys. Buitrago, Pozzovivo, the GC guys I care to mention. They lost 19 seconds. They got put on 19 seconds. And then I don't see any DNFs, and then there's other people that aren't relevant for GC. So 19 seconds is the time loss. Now, the gain from that, I guess, will be Almeida moves further away from Gegenhardt in 3rd position.
Yes.
Because
Hart drops for 4 positions.
Really?
Yeah, to 8th.
Because of Caruso.
Kung jumps past him, Roglic jumps past him, Thomas and Vlasov.
So all the good work of Gegenhardt's TT yesterday is basically, let's say he put in extra effort training or they adjusted the setup and that was a 20-second delta. That's been erased today with that crash. And yeah, Vlasov moves up and Thomas moves up. Now, I would still say Gegenhardt is their, looks like their best GC rider, Ineos, but they need to figure out what they're doing. Because, to be honest, Ineos today, if you've got Ganna and all his mighty power, you should probably use it if your plan is, like, I assume their goal wasn't to be sitting in a deep right pocket and it was to be at the front. Well, then Ganna should, if he can, and I assume he should pull full gas with Gegenhardt in the wheel. Unless
they are in the Italian media mindset and they think that Filippo Ganna can actually win the Giro d'Italia.
I mean, maybe.
Nah.
Maybe, if all the mountain stages get snowed out, anything's possible, right?
Yeah, that's true. That's not that. Well, who knows? If they take Monte Lusario out and just take the flat part, he might be pretty happy with that.
Remco still wins. Remco beat him in the flat part of the TT yesterday. Remco had some words, though, after this stage. He says, "We know who caused the crash. It wasn't a nice move." And didn't name names.
I heard about Groves, but I'm not sure, so I'm not going to point at Groves.
I don't understand because they were front on. I don't understand what they could have done. The Alpecin guy was riding a straight line, like, unless there was some elbow fighting. And also, this is the 3 kilometer rule.
I see a UAE rider moving to the other side of the road and pushes a quick step rider. So UE rider it's behind the Alpecin. I've got the video here.
Okay.
UE rider is behind the Alpecin train and moves to the right, touches quick step, and quick step rider goes to the right.
And this when Remco shouts, "Yeah, what the fuck" or something.
And then the crash happens. So
But the crash is behind Remco, right?
Yeah. UE rider is the one that I see as the one that moved to the right here. Whether he was influenced by someone, that is not known. So
and Remco panic brakes.
The thing with these crashes as well is we can say, oh, this rider moved to the right and so forth.
It's a sprint stage.
Unless it's actually a move where they're like trying to move someone
like
to the side or
the bars.
Stuff like that. There's stuff like this going to happen in every single stage. But if Remco says it's a dirty move, then maybe it's a dirty move. We didn't see it. But in reality, it's hard to point at riders for causing crashes unless we've got solid proof that they caused the crash, because every rider in the peloton has to cause a crash at some point in their career.
Unless, like, I didn't see a rider full-on swing, at least from the front on, to start the domino effect. So, like, guys are going to fight for position hard in the last 5Ks of the first road stage of a Grand Tour. Like, that's what's going to happen. And it's hectic and it's scary. And, yeah, like, probably wasn't a nice move, but also, like, Remco leaves a big gap and then, boom, people breaking behind and gone. So, I guess good job from Quickstep and Jumbo today to keep out of trouble. Thomas just makes it. I don't know how, like, of all people to probably, like, I can't believe Geraint Thomas made it. But anyway, that's today's stage. It was just a classic sprint stage. Chaos, tension, stress, and Jonathan Milan gets the job done. I mean, this is the thing, Benji. He probably wouldn't have because Remco's performance yesterday, but he's a good TT rider in a different world where Remco does the tour because he should have anyway, and it's a prologue. Jonathan Milan on a different team goes into pink today because his TT would be so much better. That Bahrain TT setup is so bad. The suit is slow. The whatever extensions and the way they have set up for the guys, their guys eat a lot of wind in the chest. I don't know how quick the helmet is. Like, there is the haves and have-nots, and the Bahrain are the have-nots. Ineos and UAE, like, Ineos were fast. Yesterday, UAE have taken a step up this year, potentially where they're equal, if not better, than Jumbos in the TT setup. But Bahrain, like, there's a skill that guy has that is kind of wasted there. And that's where, like, same with the Foss signing. Like, if Foss goes to Israel, it's like, well, I mean, what's the point? He's a TT first guy. So it'd be interesting to see, like, Milan is a guy with prologues in Grand Tours that we could see taking leader's jersey in future years. Yeah,
and then we saw that Alex Dowsett video on YouTube at some point where it was like going over the setups in World Tour and so forth. He was discussing which setups would be seen by riders as the best setups. Specialized being named as a great one, Trek being named as one of the great ones as well. And if Milan indeed joins Trek, then we might actually find out how solid he is as a rider next year with top-notch equipment compared to the setup he currently has. So I'm very curious to see that. I'm looking forward to see that. And, well, this stage summarized, Milan wins strongly. Would he have won if it was a large bunch sprint? Nobody knows, but he looked strong enough to beat the majority of the sprinters on the start list in the first place, if he's in a good position. And most importantly, Keegan Hart loses time in GC, Vine loses time in GC, and that's about it, eh?
Yeah, and Haig and Carthy and Uran and all, and Pino. Pino hopefully goes to stages. Anyway, tomorrow's stage from Vasto to Melfi. We're still on the coast, but no crosswinds allowed. It's the law. It's flat pretty much. An intermediate sprint with 100 Ks in Foggia. I would dare say the breakaway will take that. I always forget. Italy, the Giro has like one's just sprint points and one's bonus seconds, and I can never figure it out. I have to relearn it every year. So it's 170 Ks of flat. It's a long stage, and then there's decently hard climbing, 6K, 6.5%, which, you know, after 170 Ks in the legs, isn't that easy. And then there's a short descent of 2-3 kilometers, and then they do the Valico La Croce, which is 3K, 6%, before a rolling sort of false flat downhill before, with some pickups, a finish in Melfi. Now, this does look perfect for Pedersen if they, even Magnus Cort, but looks
or
really
Milan.
Good. See, now 6K, 6%, followed by another 6-minute climb, 7-minute climb. I'm less convinced because this is getting on towards 25 minutes of climbing, depending on how hard Trek can pace this with Mollema. So if I'm Trek tomorrow, if Pedersen's in good climbing shape, I put Mollema to the front at the base of the first climb, and I blow every sprinter off the back as much as possible. And now their problem then is, who do Trek have to control? Can Kirsch get over to then control what is from the top of that climb? Still, can I do maths? 30 kilometers to the finish. So can they keep Milan, Gaviria, Groves behind? Can they stop people attacking in this false flat run-in for 30 kilometers if Pedersen is indeed the best climbing sprinter here? So, or does just the break? I don't think the break win. If you're Trek right after today's stage, you think, fuck that, we're going again tomorrow, right? Because you just missed out on the chance after chasing all day. So there's no, I mean, yeah, I think Trek control, probably Alpecin help. I think Trek are going to do a lot of work, and it's not going to work for them either. Someone comes back, or like in the this reminds me of Bergado's Paris stage win, when they paced really hard, and then it was actually quite a thin group, like 30, 40 guys, and then they didn't have enough to control, and there's pickups where people can attack. So now I have to look at a sort of finesser that could actually attack and win this stage, and who won't be chased down. I
don't think they'll be the only team, though, because Jaco with Matthews, 3 years ago, we would have said this is a Matthews stage, and every single Grand Tour that the stage was present. So Matthews on paper should be getting over this climb as well, especially if he has his climbing legs of the last few years. That should on paper work. That's one of the riders I'd be like, this is a finish for you. But if I look at the other riders on the start list, I'm not looking at those riders that can get over this hill and still have a bit of a sprint. And whether Trek will pace hard enough to get rid of all these riders, like the Milans of the world, I don't know. But will there be other riders that try to attack? Because I remember Vine and Bardet attacking on a finish like this in the Vuelta at some point. Do we expect someone in GC being like, YOLO, why not?
Vine might, I mean, if he did it in the Vuelta, why wouldn't he try again? Because he just lost time today. There's also bonus seconds with 10Ks to go at the end of a little pickup. So I reckon Vine's not a bad shout.
Or Remco has seen some weakness in Roglic in the time trial. Do you think he'll dare to try something on this one? Roglic wouldn't drop here, eh?
If Quickstep just set this up and pace, all you're going to do, I think, would be to gift bonus seconds. Yeah. Actually, no, Remco said he beat Roglic in the final sprint, so he's much quicker than Roglic in a sprint.
If Trek's hard pacing the climb, and you don't set up for Remco, and you try towards the end of the climb, I still think they'll have trouble catching Remco back.
Yeah, but you're not going to draw Roglic.
He's not going to risk it.
3K, 6%.
It might not be worth it yet at this point.
I think Andreas Leknesson wins this stage from a descent attack. I think he's someone who's irrelevant enough for GC. No, for GC that like Vine they ain't letting go.
Like Tarame.
Like Vine, no, but Tarame don't have the horsepower. Whereas Leknesson's got the horsepower. He's also good enough to easily make it over the climb, but not good enough that they respect him on GC. And I think he could win this stage from a late attack. I'd love to see it and him to go for it. I mean, Meyerhofer climbed well in Cadel Evans road race, so maybe he's stuck to him. I'd also like to see, he was very strong in a Catalunya similar stage. Carlos Verona have free reign to go for a similar attack on the downhill or in the run-in as well. And I dare say, I think Ganna's going to attack as well. I think that's his plan, to go for this stage and attack a weakened Trek group. So, yeah, but I'm picking Leknesson.
I really like your Filippo Ganna pick.
Yeah.
As in like...
You can take it.
No, I'll go for Pedersen because I'm really boring. But I really believe in Ganna's attack as well for this stage. It would be a good spot to attack and try to take pink as a consequence of what happened today. Because at this point, you might as well double down.
I mean, yeah, if you sold Gegenhardt today, then what's he got to take? 22 seconds, plus he'll take 10 bonus if he wins, so he's got to beat the GC group by
And Remco will be happy.
Is he? Remco looks stressed, man. He is stressing.
Yeah, but if I'm
everyone's
Remco,
stressing. But
if I'm Remco, I'm happy that the pink jersey goes to a different team, especially Ineos that needs to control while having two GC leaders that are not in the pink jersey.
Free Vivaka. Let Peter Seri have his day. It's not all about you. It's not all about you, Remco. Let Peter Seri win. Come on.
Cataneo.
Yeah, not Cataneo. Seri and Vivaka. They do more work. Anyway, that was the Giro stage, and tomorrow's stage I think could be an interesting final, but I wouldn't watch the first 3 hours if I'm honest at that stage. Anyway,